Rise up!
This is the Rise Up See Red podcast, all about the Arizona Cardinals and the NFL, featuring insider and outsider perspectives. Enjoy the best hour of Cardinals talk on the web. Now here are your hosts, Jess Root and Seth Cox.
Hello, Arizona Cardinals fans, and welcome to the latest edition of the Rise Up See Red podcast, the best of Cardinals talk on the web. I'm your host, Jess Root from CardsWire.com, USA Today's NFL Wire site that covers, of course, Arizona Cardinals. With me for episode 730, our reaction show to the Cardinals' 40-20 loss to the Houston Texans on Sunday, is my co-host Seth Cox from RevengeOfTheBirds.com, SB Nation's Arizona Cardinals site. And it's 4 40-pointers. They've given up 4 40 burgers in the last 6 games. They fell behind 17-0. The defense, they gave up a 2-play drive on a busted coverage, broken tackle, missed tackle, and then immediately fumbled the ball away. What? I don't know. It was another laughable Cardinals loss. And I don't how much more can we say about how they are losing?
It's just, it's just disappointing that this is always, the reality of this franchise. And it's interesting how things have descended, and you look at the way things go and the way that this season has gone, and this is just one of the seasons that in the history of a terrible franchise, you're looking at what may end up being the low point. And I know that's crazy to say, but I mean, remember, 3 wins is the low water mark, right? Obviously going back way back, there was lesser wins, but in the modern NFL, three wins is the low water mark. This could be their first 3-14 season, Jess. Think about that. And they have it, and they've only got 2 wins, or they only have 1 win after they named Jacoby Brissett. Well, I guess it was they have no win since they named Jacoby the starter.
Correct.
Right?
It was after the Dallas game that Jacoby was named the starter, and they're 0-6 with a minus 95 point differential.
Yeah, and it's really interesting. We'll get to the offense, but there was a tweet. I think it was Kevin Cole. I'll double check, but it basically said there was no data to use on the Cardinals' neutral passing game this week because they were down 17, and they only had run 3 offensive plays. And so, the reality of it is, and you and I have talked about it, is it's just a season that literally just makes this fandom and being a fan really tough, because you have people out and out saying oh, I don't even care if they win. Look at the stats. Look at what they've unlocked. Trey McBride. They've unlocked Michael Wilson. And it's then what's the point of rooting for them? Why would you want to watch football games? And it just makes sense that a lot of fans just probably aren't even watching, right? They're just checking in later on, oh yeah, another 250 yards, 3 touchdowns. I mean, the amount of fantasy football people that are hyping up what what Jacoby did against the Houston Texans is actually nauseating, because
They were down 3 scores. They were down 3 scores in half of the first quarter. It was like the Seattle game again.
Right. It's like, do people are okay with just meaningless stats that literally, I mean, it's crazy to me to think that they were a Calais Campbell blocked field goal away from being outscored in every quarter. The only quarter they won was the second quarter, 7-6. They tied in the third quarter, 7-7, and they lost the fourth quarter, 10-6. They were down 33-14, or sorry, 30-14 at one point, and still could only score one touchdown in the fourth quarter. Like, these numbers that are being put up, literally, I mean, they're just the most empty and meaningless things. And it's a guy like Trey McBride saying, yeah, 16 games in a row, what's the point? We're not winning. Like, and the fact that, and I get it, fans need something to be excited about, but like, the fact that you have a guy that's breaking, Cardinals records, NFL records, and he looks miserable, tells you kind of everything you need to know. Like, none of this matters. None of these stats matter, because at the end of the day, they don't amount to anything. They amount to getting your jersey in Canton, or getting a ball in Canton, or cleats in Canton, and winning 3 games. Like, I don't know. Did you hear? And I think it was a mic'd up thing, but I'll have to go back and look, that the Texans were talking about how it was like playing a preseason game.
Oh my gosh.
Like, if people don't understand, like, that is literally the biggest insult.
Oh my gosh, yes. Like, in the preseason games, they don't matter, and you're playing nobody, and to have first team on first team and it feels like a preseason game, that's, oh my gosh. But like, it was this game, aside from the overhitting and Houston putting up 40 points with the type of offense that they've been running, aside from that, the outcome was as expected. The Texans dominated this game. And so, like, when it comes to reactions, it's just, it continues to be almost laughable at this point. If you're a hardcore fan, it's hard to do anything but just laugh about how things are going, because the post game comments, everything about this feels empty. And I guess my initial reaction is at least there is something to cheer for. Because if we go back to 2018, and as bad as that was, or even 2022, in 2022, there wasn't a dang thing to be cheering for. It was just abysmal. 2018, there was maybe the belief in Josh Rosen, but there was nothing on the field to cheer for. And so this year, at least you have this. You have a quarterback who's putting up numbers. You have a pass catcher who's setting records. And so it does make part of the game palatable in terms of viewing, or at least following along, even if it isn't competitive. So I guess in some ways that makes sense. But like it, and then every injury that happens, you're like, really? Another injury? Like, how many running backs are the Cardinals going to lose this year?
But also, it goes back to what we talked about, and we can have this conversation at the end of the season. even even in a better manner. But like when we talked about it seeming like the team was tanking, these are the things that we mean, right? Like you basically abandoned the running game as a whole. You're not, there's very minimal chance. I won't say it's not going to happen, because who knows with Drew Petzing calling the offense, but you're not going to have a single player with over 100 attempts, and you're unlikely to have a single player reach 300 yards rushing on the season, Jess, on the season. And you just never did anything. You were like, oh, okay, well, we'll keep giving Bam Knight the ball 5 times a game. We'll keep giving Amari Mercado the ball, 2 to 3 times a game. We'll give Michael Carter the ball, 5 times a game. We'll have our 12 rushing attempts with our running backs, and that'll be it. And you have that, and you don't, you literally don't bring anybody in. And so then this week, when Bam goes down, which was an inevitability at that point, right? Like you just had to assume it was going to happen. You go to Corey Kiner, and everybody's going, "Who's Corey Kiner?"
That was the comment in our. Now, it was facetious in some ways, but our football group chat of guys who are dialed in Cardinals players, and like, who's that guy?
Yeah. Well, and so, but what makes it worse, Jess? Here's what makes it worse. On the flip side, the Cardinals gave up 100 yards to Jawar Jordan, who had never
in his NFL debut, pulled up from the practice squad, mind you.
Yeah.
I'll say I have a former the other part of my life, which is my teaching career, a former student who is a huge Houston sports fan, and he messaged me before the game telling me how the Texans were going to smoke the Cardinals, which I agreed with. And afterwards, he's like, I don't even know who that Jordan kid is.
Yeah.
And well, he is a hardcore Texans fan.
Yeah, he went to Hamilton High School in Arizona.
Yes.
So, like, that's the wild thing. But he's a 26-year-old second-year player. So he was one of the COVID kids that took advantage of being able to stay in college for a decade, basically. And then he comes out and has, like you said, 101 yards rushing on 15 attempts.
Ripped off a 50-yarder.
So the point of all that is, don't tell me that, oh, well, the Cardinals are down to their practice squad. Well, guess what? They just gave up 100 yards rushing to a practice
squad running back.
Like all the excuses of the crap is it's just absurd to me at this point that we're okay with it. And by we, I mean, not you and I, but like fans are like, oh, what are you going to do? It's just absurd that that's the reaction to it. It's like, oh, they had 300 yards of offense against the best defense in the NFL. Like, nobody's passed for as many yards as Jacoby Brissett did against the offense. And you go, okay, so they played well? Well, no, they lost by 20. Oh, so then what are you bragging about? Like, why are you acting like that matters? That's where I'm struggling with this, because there's not a single, again, I go back to this. They're choosing to throw the ball 40 plus times a game, because the last couple of weeks, especially, their offensive line has looked better, And their running game with their running backs has been averaging over 5 yards a carry. So let's run the ball 10 times. And that's just it. Like it's a volume passing game. There's no efficiency to it. And it's almost all garbage time stats. I mean, they were down 3 scores. They got within.
Never got within one. They never got within one.
Never got within one. And in fact, just after they got within 2 scores, they never got back within. I mean, again, they were technically down 16 at one point, but I guess they were down 13 at one point too, right? But like, yeah, they were just nobody believed that this team was coming back. And they did it, they were down 23 and people would be like, well, at least they're still playing hard. I'm like, if we're to the point of being like, hey, they're playing hard, then every single player needs to go. Every coach needs to go. Like it's literally a lost cause, because if we're at the point of playing hard, then we're genuinely just there's no reason to even continue watching this disaster.
Wow. Coming up next on the Rise Up Sierra podcast, it's our Cardinals talk on the web. Let's talk about Jonathan Gannon, the pitch he would give to Michael Bidwill, and moves on the coaching staff without firings. That's coming up next on Rise Up Sierra. We're back on the Rise of Sierra podcast. It's our Cardinals talk on the web, talking about the Cardinals lost the Texans. Jonathan Gannon was asked about what pitch he would need to give Michael Bidwill for his coaching staff, his job. Interesting. Like, I always find, I will say that those lines of questioning are weird, I think, because it's a performance league. But when would a coach ever say, yeah, I'm worried about my job? They're never going to say that. But it's like, how do you avoid letting the hot seat discourse affect? He concentrates his job. His job is to fix things on the football team. He's not worried of most coaches, and I will say this is big, and we saw this from Cliff Kingsbury as well. I mean, there was taxing. The losing is taxing, but most NFL coaches financially are fine. So what was his pitch be to ownership return next season? There's no pitch. I'm concentrating on Atlanta. That makes sense. Like if there's a pitch that he has, it would be to focus on the next game. I believe in myself. I believe in our team. We're at a dip right now. We're going to come through some adversity, but I do believe in us, and we'll get out of the dip. It's my job to evaluate everything, see what's working, what's not. We're very process-oriented, just to change because we've had a bunch of injuries and how we do things. There's a lot of layers involved. And so it feels like he knows he's sticking around, or he's just lost in the mess. And so, I mean, if you're Michael Bidwill, let's put it this way. How could Jonathan Gannon convince you to run it back, at least with his leadership?
I don't even think that he has to do any convincing. There's a lot of people that are looking at this and going, oh yeah, like it makes sense. I mean, doesn't it, right? They're injured. They got a lot of guys injured. And so if you look at it, and I've read some things like, he has a lot of faith in the young staff, and he's excited. He just wants to see, more from them, but he understands what is the word, kind of like the trials that they're going through right now, because they're also it's so many injuries. And it's like, well, do you not look at your counterparts in the NFC West and how injured they are, and that they're still, they still have a track to win the first seed in the NFC. Like, they survived without their franchise quarterback. They are playing without the best linebacker in the NFL. They are playing with
top pass rusher.
Yeah, their best.
They lost their first round pick. They haven't had their best receiver in Brandon Ayuk the entire year. In fact, he just quit. He just quit on them. George Kittle missed time. The 49ers, who they could end up there. They could end up with they are a game back of the Seahawks and the Rams. But if they catch them, because they're going to catch one, if they keep winning, they're going to catch one of those two teams this week, because the Rams and Seahawks play on Thursday night. Whoever loses that game on Thursday will drop to third place in the division if San Francisco wins this weekend, because San Francisco holds all the tiebreakers. They're 4-1 in the division. They're 8-2 in the conference. And so if they could sneak into that number one seed, and with the season they've had, that's really incredible. And the Cardinals, the Cardinals don't even look good. The Cardinals, there's nothing they do well anymore. And so it's hard for me. If I'm Michael Bidwell, I know it's maybe what it is. I think what it is when Bidwell hired Monty Ossenfort, I think there was a level of trust that he put into Monty, and he's saying, I'm going to step back and letting Monty run the show. And Monty hired Jonathan Gannon. And so maybe maybe that's it. But if I'm Michael Bidwell, how can you, aside from the financial implications where you're paying Kingsbury still, and then you'd be paying Gannon for another year, and then you'd be paying a new coach, having to pay him enough to convince him to come here. There's nothing about this team that you're like, oh, Trey McBride and Jacoby Brissett. I'm like, you've lost the last 6 games by 95 points. The offense is putting up some yards and points, but they've scored no more than 20 in the last month, despite the improved offense. They do nothing well other than pass the ball at a volume rate. Their defense is bad in every way. They're bad on special teams. They don't run the ball. They can't stay healthy. I find it would be hard for me to convince me that you would need to come back, because either you're making wholesale changes on your staff, and if you're doing that, why would I trust you as the head coach, since you assembled that staff to begin with?
Right. And you look at it, you didn't bring back a defensive line coach to get somebody else in here. And then you invested 2 decent contracts along the defensive line. We'll give a little grace and say Josh Sweat is more of an edge guy instead of a defensive lineman. Okay. You invested, 2 medium-sized contracts and 2 draft picks in the last 2 years, and your defensive line is worse. Your safeties and your young corners are barely playable. We all knew that there would be a fall for Buddha eventually. I talked about it early in the season, right? He and Matthew kind of mirror each other in terms of styles and size and physique and those things. And we saw Matthew kind of hit the wall at the same age. So Buddha, struggling isn't shocking, but the entire secondary being bad is worrisome. The linebackers, I mean, everybody was like really pissed off the other day when Akeem Davis Gaither got benched for that game. And then they put him in, and Gannon basically called him out without calling him out, because he's the guy that keeps missing his zone drops. Like, if you go back and watch the film, he's the guy that's abandoning his zones to run with crossers, which in terms of coaching defense and the linebackers, it is literally like the cardinal sin. Like, don't do that, because it creates these massive holes in the defensive secondary that can be exploited. Crossers are hard to cover. You have to pass them off and then go get back to your spot, but they're chasing and just opening these massive holes in the zones that are then getting picked apart. And teams are going back to it over and over again because they just know that if a guy's in there like Davis Gaither, that he's gonna run with the crosser. And so, you bench him. Cody Simon again gets hurt in the most innocuous way. Like, you watch that playback and you're like, what happened there? Like, how did he get hurt? And so then, Davis Gaither has to come back in, and it's just another crap show. And it's baffling to think that this is all happening, and they're getting, quote unquote, their guys, right? They're getting their guys as coaches. They're getting their guys as players, because that's the thing. Either the coaching's awful or the players are awful. Like, you can't be 3-11 and have one of the worst defenses, or possibly the worst defense in Arizona Cardinals history. This is the first defense in Cardinals history to give up 40 points or more in 4 games. Just, that's absurd to say. Like, that's crazy. And everybody's supposed to be like, yeah, run it back. I mean, there's a lot of injuries. What are you going to do, right? Like, that's crazy to think that is even in the realm of possibility at this point, right?
That's good. And this is the part we didn't mention yet, is that in the midst of this hot seat, we're starting to see assistants jump ship. Coach Debo, defensive line coach, has reportedly accepted a defensive line coaching job at Michigan State. So, like, same job, but in college. Patrick Toney, their safeties coach, defensive backs coach, is in the running for a job. It's for a DC job. What job is that? Is that Mississippi State?
Yeah.
And so now that's a promotion, but Toney spent a good amount of time in the college ranks. It's kind of an interesting thing. And so when I see that, I think first, were they told they're not going to be back, and so they're actively looking for jobs? The report that came out from 247 Sports about Coach Debo was that he wanted to get back into the college game. And so he's rejoining Pat Fitzgerald, a guy who he played for and coached for already. There's a lot of reasons, but it's interesting to me to see, especially a guy who was a first-time NFL position coach, and to have it be such a surprise that he was here, like, oh, that guy, so young. It feels like he discovered he didn't like coaching pros as much as he like his high energy, high participation and drills and like that. Like, I think probably, frankly, enjoys college more because of they're not grown men, they're not professionals, and while they are making money, but there's something different to that. And I find that kind of interesting, that that was part of the report, that he wanted to get back into the college game. And so I had two, like one, oh, he clearly did he not like the pros? Did he not like working for the Cardinals? And was he going to be ousted anyway?
Yeah, and that's right. Like, that's the question. Was he going to get moved on from regardless? So he just kind of did it early. And it begs the problem with the move is, and it's not a problem. I mean, good for Debo, do whatever you need to do. Especially position coaches, right? They're always mercenaries for the most part. It's very Dante.
You totally have to.
Have to. Dante Scalia, the Patriots O-line coach, and then the Eagles O-line coach. Those are really the only guys, right? Like, that stick around forever. In terms of position coaches, we've seen coordinators stick around for a long time and stuff like that. But yeah, for the most part, it's not something that happens. And so, yeah, just go do what you need to. But it begs the question, right? Are they leaving because they're going to get let go by Gannon, or are they leaving because everybody's going to get let go, right? So
that when you see assistants leaving a losing team, you're like, oh, this is what's happening. That's what it feels like. But it's weird because it both feels like it and it doesn't feel like it. If that makes any sense at all.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is like, the other question becomes, what was the connection between the players and the coaches? And that begs a real question of, like, are the players coachable, and are the coaches getting the reaction that they need from the players? And I look at a guy like Debo, right? 27 years old. So you've got gray beards like Calais and Dalvin Tomlinson on that defense. And both have had tremendous careers. Obviously, Calais is on a special level in terms of what he's done. But it genuinely begs the question of, like, are the veterans' days and the fact that those guys understandably aren't practicing every day, and then you've got guys like Walter Nolan and Darius Robinson, who have struggled to stay healthy this year. Like, are they even getting through to these guys? I mean, Darius has missed 2 games. Walter's, missed 9 games. What are you teaching Calais Campbell and Dalvin Tomlinson at this point? And then on the flip side, like, are you able to get through and register with guys like Walter Nolan and Darius Robinson when they're dealing with nagging injuries, when they're not participating consistently? Like, and that's just, and so again, it's a chicken egg thing, right? Like, is it the coaching, or is it the players? And it's tough for a guy like Debo, who's like I said, a young coach, to want to have that reputation of being the guy that was coaching one of the worst position groups in the NFL, right? Like, it's your first NFL gig, and you're like, damn, man, I thought I was going to be working with Calais and Dalvin. They barely practice, and then Walter's been out almost all season. Like what am I doing? Like, what am I doing genuinely? So Yeah, it's just I don't know, man. It's tough. This whole season's been kind of a crap show, right?
It really has. It really has. Let's talk a little bit more about the offense. So coming on next on the Rise of Your podcast, Best Our Cardinals Talk on now. They're the one best Cardinals talk on the web. There are 3 bright spots about that offense. Let's talk about them. That's coming up next on Rise of Sea Red. We're back on the Rise of Sea Red podcast, Best Our Cardinals Talk on the web. There are 3 bright spots. You got Jacoby, you've got Michael Wilson, you got Trey McBride, and let's talk about that because we are getting volume numbers. Jacoby's had, like, statistically, he's doing really well. And if you ignore the results, like what he's doing statistically is really good. He's like by getting 3 touchdown passes against Houston, he's now at exactly 2 touchdown passes per game. He's got 3 times as many touchdown passes. So he's 3-to-1 touchdown interception rate. That's good. He's completing over 2/3. He's completing about 2/3 of his passes. He's on pace for about 3,500 yards, and that's in 12 games. Like, these are numbers you want to see from your starting quarterback. And to get it from Jacoby Brissett at his age now, at age 33, when he's been a journeyman his entire career, it's really positive. But then you take a look at the game results and you're like, but what does this mean? Because there are positives 100% with the way that Jacoby's playing, because he's generally speaking, he's taking care of the football. Like, the interceptions he's thrown the last 2 weeks were bad interceptions, but otherwise he takes care of the football. He gets the offense moving. And there's other issues, but when it's clear that he's not losing games, but he's also having no net impact on terms of their competitiveness and their ability to compete in games.
Well, and so what's so interesting about, like, what's so interesting about his numbers is that I've kind of explained it before, but like, they're just, unfortunately, they just don't matter. And what I mean by that is, like, he's putting up all these numbers and putting up all these, counting stats, and it doesn't lead to this team being any better. They're like, it's crazy to say this because everybody, the vibes are so different, but like, I think they're scoring 0.4 points per game more than they were with Kyler, which is wild to say because, that hot start was, that's all anybody talked about. And so you look at it, but we talked about it. Like, they're throwing the ball at such an absurd rate that it becomes basically it becomes basically like that it's hard to explain. Like, basically the numbers don't matter because they're throwing at such a high rate that he's going to have these numbers no matter what because he's throwing the ball more than everybody else. Yeah, so it was Pat Thorman, by the way, sorry. And he said, wondering why there are only 31 teams in my week 15 neutral pass rate data. Cardinals never ran a play while the script was plus minus 7 points during the first 3 quarters. So neutral pass rate data means like when the game is in the balance, right? Like when the game is close and matters. Are they more likely to throw the ball or run the ball? The Cardinals before this week, so there was no data from this week. Before this week, the Cardinals Um, they are the number one team in neutral pass rate, meaning like when the game is within reach, they're saying, Jacoby, win the game for us. And Jacoby is saying no. He's saying no.
We've talked about that. So, in the games that he's played, so he's 1-8. There are 8 losses. 4 of them were the 3-score, the 40 burgers that they gave up. And then the other 4 games. So you've got Indy, you've got Green Bay, you've got Jacksonville, and you've got Tampa. That Jacoby has had the opportunity he's had the ball late in the fourth quarter or in overtime in all 4 of those games. And in fact, against Jacksonville, it was at the end of the game in the fourth quarter and in overtime. He's 0 for 5 in leading touchdowns to win the game. 0 and 5. 0 for 5. He did get the one game-tying field goal against Jacksonville to force overtime. And that's it. That's it. And so we've talked about it before. So low leverage Cardinals offense, awesome. High leverage situation, they ain't it.
Right. And that's what the hard part becomes, is that like people just, they look at it and they go, oh, well, look how much they're, look how many stats he's putting up, and look at how much he's doing. And it's like, you look at it and you go, yeah, the numbers are statistically impressive, but it's literally just resulting in nothing. And that is where the issue comes in, is like, why would you want to celebrate that and look at that going, oh yeah, that's what we need. Because at the end of the day, this isn't fantasy football, right? So Trey McBride having 10 touchdowns is awesome for Trey McBride. Like, awesome. 100% awesome. The Cardinals averaging less than 20 points per game is terrible NFL offense. And so people are going like, look at Trey blowing up. Like, he's killing it. It's like, well, they can't run the ball, so they have to throw the ball in the red zone, which, again, but they're scoring at such a low rate now that you look at it and you go, oh, this team can't actually score when it matters. I mean, we talked about it. They were never, after the first possession of the game, they were literally never within 7 points at all. Like, that's kind of wild to think about, right? Like, and so when you look at the total stats and you go, oh, yeah, I mean, he threw for 249 yards and 3 touchdowns against the best defense in the NFL. You would expect to be like, oh yeah, he gave him a chance to win. It was like, no. They were down by 3+ scores most of the game. You're like, oh, so then why does it matter? I mean, Jess, we can go back to that Jacksonville game, right? Like, go back to that Jacksonville game and think about it. No team this century has lost a game when they won the turnover battle 4-0, but the Cardinals did. And that's because their offense stunk. I mean, their offense was dreadful, but he threw for 290 yards or whatever it was, and 3 touchdowns, right? So those numbers were great. Like sorry, 317 yards and a touchdown. Like those numbers were great, right? Like who cares? It's like, no. If the numbers mattered, they would have won a game that every other team this century has won. Like that's where I think the disconnect is for the fantasy football counting stats people, and the people are like, no, like you're literally just not winning games. Like you're not even competitive. Like you finally had a great defensive performance. I know it's been almost 5 weeks now, or it has been 5 weeks. You finally had a great defensive performance, and you still lost. It's wild to think like scoring 37 points the last 2 weeks against the Rams and the Texans, the top two defenses in the NFL. So you technically raised their points against numbers. You technically raised them. Is something that people would be like, see, it's not, the offense isn't an issue. It's like, no, the defense is an issue 100%. But if the offense can't score more than 20 points, they're not going to win games, especially when they have so many drives that are completely empty. So I don't know, man. It's wild to me that this is even a thing. I mean, the
cool, the numbers that we're seeing for Michael Wilson and Trey McBride, and for those who believe, and those of us who thought that Michael Wilson had some talent to him, to see the production that he has when he's given the opportunity, it's satisfying. It's something that allows us to go. It confirms what we believed about what he could be. But it's also incredibly frustrating because you're like, well, then why can't we unlock him in a number 2 role? If he can do that, why can't he do more in a number 2 role? But we know that that's a schematic problem for the most part, because that is both with Kyler Murray and Jacoby Brissett. Whoever's playing the X, production. Whoever's not playing the X almost gets nothing.
Exactly. So yeah, it's been interesting. I mean, I'm happy to see a guy like Trey McBride, have the success because he is a relentless worker. And it's also like, I know it sucks, but it's also cool that he looks at it and goes, it doesn't matter. Because to me, that tells me everything I need to know. And by the way, Jacoby said the same thing, right? Like when he set the NFL record for completions in a game, he was like, we lost by 20? Like, why are we even talking about this? Like, yeah, it's cool. I'll think about it when I'm retired, but we lost by 19 points. Like, who cares? Like, really, this is what we're touting now, is that we set an NFL record in a 3-score loss. Like, come on.
Yeah. One more thing coming up next on the Rise of Your podcast, special Cardinals Talk on the Web. What is up with this defense? That's coming up next on Rise of Red. We're back on the Rise of Your podcast, special Cardinals Talk on the Web. This Cardinals defense, I don't like. What is it? 40 or more in 4 of the last 6 games. They give up Nico Collins, 3 catches, 2 touchdowns, 85 yards. They only got 1 sack of CJ Stroud, 2 hits. They only got their hands on 3 passes. They didn't have creating takeaways. Houston was over 50% on 3rd down, and a practice squad running back rushed for over 100 yards in his NFL debut. So did we miss anything? Oh, Dalton Schultz, 8 catches, 76 yards and a touchdown. I mean, they're not slow. They're not limiting teams' main weapons, and no names are putting up career numbers. So that's That makes 2 weeks in a row for career highs. Obviously, Jawar Jordan's NFL debut was his career high, but the Rams game when Blake Corum, their backup, went for 128. So the Cardinals are neither stopping or limiting the main weapons. They're also giving up career games to guys who aren't the main guys. There's nothing good about this defense at all.
Yeah, and that's the hard part is you look at it and you kind of wonder, because even the Tampa game wasn't bad, right? 279 yards total of for the Bucks. They gave up under 100 yards rushing. I mean, that Jacksonville game, they gave up over 100 yards rushing, but they basically were the last team that did well against Trevor Lawrence, right? And you look at those games and you go, okay, I mean, maybe the defense is finding a little something, and then it's like, no, we will then now have statistically the two worst performances on defense that we've had all season, by a large margin, by the way, too. Like, it's going to absolutely suck. And you just look at it and you go, okay, the Rams make sense, right? They're the Rams. They're phenomenal offensively. Like, we went over all the numbers last week, right? But second in scoring, second in passing yards, eighth in rushing yards. Like, they're phenomenal. Like, okay, that makes sense. And then you go, Texans, they're getting better, but they haven't really done anything spectacular outside of that 26 points against the Jaguars a couple weeks ago. I mean, you look at it, just look at it. 16 points against the Tennessee Titans. 23 points against the Bills. That's pretty good. 20 points against the Colts, 20 against the Chiefs. And then it's like, 40 points against the Arizona Cardinals. But again, you look at it, 307 yards of offense. 399 yards of offense. Like, it was so easy. Like, everything that they wanted to do was easy in that game. And they pulled back so much on the offensive side of the ball in that game too. Like, they could have thrown the ball probably for 400 plus yards if they really wanted to. Because, I mean, the Cardinals weren't stopping it. I mean, CJ Stroud was ho-hum 22 of 29 for 260 yards and 3 touchdowns. Like, think about that, Jess. It took him 11 less attempts to throw for 11 more yards and the same amount of touchdowns. The efficiency was staggering. And so when you talk about, passing yards and things like that, that's what you need. You don't need 400 yards to be like, oh, look how good this offense was. You need an offense that gives you points when you're doing something, right? So, like, the Texans, when they threw the ball, every pass was basically, or pass completion was basically a guaranteed point for them, right? Like, they were going to score when they threw the ball. And they just reined it back in. They ran the ball 33 times. They didn't even, because the defense for the Cardinals was like, oh, Jawar Jordan? Yeah, we can't stop him. He's too good, right? They injured Woody Marks, or, what does he do in that game, right? So that's what it really comes down to. And you look at all the numbers, you look at all the stats, and outside of Walter Nolan, and I truly mean this, who's the guy that you look at on this defense and you're like, oh, you can build around him. I mean, Josh Sweat, don't get me wrong, he's been fantastic, but he's 28. Like, he's having his best statistical year from a sack production standpoint. And again, it's basically meaningless. Like,
yeah. Nolan's there. I think
I think we're
what we saw
hopeful
from
about
Will Johnson, I think early looked like that as well.
What about Garrett Williams? Are we in the concerned area, or are we looking at it and chalking it up to a lost year because he came back probably too early from an injury?
And that's interesting because he went from looking great last year to good early on to then now he didn't look good. Then they had the one good game and then not good again. I don't know what to think, but I think when we saw from last year, you'd hope that you could build around him.
Well, think about this, Jess. Okay, so he's only played 9 games this year. He played in 16 last year. Jess, he's allowed 283 yards receiving in 9 games. Which is terrible. Last year he allowed 329 yards in 16. He's allowed 5 touchdowns this season. He allowed 4 in his career before this season. And the quarterback rating when they throw at him is a 128.7. So, like, oh, and by the way, he's also missed 8 tackles this year. Like, a career high. He missed 7 2 years combined before this. So, like, there is the concern that last year was the anomaly, right? And he's, well, I don't think he's terrible because those numbers are terrible, by the way. But at the same time, you look at it and you're like, there's not a DB that's playing well on this team. So, I mean, maybe Denzel Burke, right? Because you look at just from a draft perspective, right? A 5th round rookie. And you look at his numbers comparatively, obviously, but, you know, in 14 games, 243 yards, he's allowed a 54.8 quarterback rating, no touchdowns. You know, so that's obviously better than Garrett. And then, you know, and then you look at Wills, and Wills allowed 316 yards and 4 touchdowns, and his rating, or his quarterback rating when targeted, is 112. So the guys that you were supposed to be like, oh yeah, you can build around these guys. And then, you know, Max Melton, outside of, you know, kind of clapping back against our buddy Kyle Odegaard. I love you, Max. Like, I think you're a good ball player, but, like, that's the best defense you've had all year, man. Like, you got bench, bro. Like, that's a tough one, right? Like, and I know now it's like, oh yeah, he's injured, but before that he was straight up benched, and it's very rare to even hear on-air talent talk about that, right? And that was talked about in the game by the play-by-play guy. You know, injured, benched, whatever's wrong with him, and you're like, wait, what? Like,
that's weird. That's weird.
And so you look at it and you're like, the guys that were supposed to be the guys that you looked at and you're like, oh, that's who you're building around. They've all regressed, which is, you know, going back to your Jonathan Gannon question. To me, that's why you're like, you can't bring these dudes back. Like, you've got guys like Max Melton who looked like they were on the right track, now questioning themselves. You've got guys like Will Johnson who, you know, again, competition, I get it, blah, blah, blah. But like early in the season, you're like, oh damn, that was the steal of the draft. And now you look at these guys and you're like, holy crap, these guys are basically unplayable.
But they all have to play because they don't have anyone better.
That's what I was going to say. That's the worst part, right? Like, holy crap, these guys are unplayable, but we have to keep putting them out there.
Oh, yeah. We'll have to talk about this Falcons game later this week. It's going to be an interesting game because the Falcons are also kind of a mess, but we might have 2 shows this week more to go. Seth and I will come later this week. I might be able to book Chrissy Freud from the Falcons Wire. So hopefully we can get that done. Until then, we'll be back again later. That's Seth Cox. I'm Jess Root. Thanks for listening as always. We'll be back again soon.
Thanks for listening to the latest edition of the Rise Up, See Red podcast. Listen to previous episodes and subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher Radio, Audioboom, or many other podcast platforms so shows are delivered directly to your mobile device. Please give the show a 5-star rating and always support the sponsors who support the show. We'll be back soon for the best hour of Cardinals talk on the web. Rise up, Red Sea, be Red, See Red, and of course, Rise Up, See Red.
Red